Om Brahmanandam Paramasukadam Kevalam Jnanamurtim Dvandvatitam Gangana Sadrisham Tattvamasyadilaksham Ekam Nityam Vimalam Achalam Sarvadi Sakshi Bhutam Bhavatitam Trigunarahitam Sadgurum Tam Namami.
Dear Seeker of Truth, welcome. This work that we are going to talk about is one of the most sacred dialogues because it happens between two enlightened beings. One is Ashtavakra, the other is King Janaka, which was Ashtavakra's disciple. So in it you will have a glimpse of the instruction of an enlightened being so that you can achieve liberation, and also the vision of how a liberated being stands, acts, what is his experience. So pay attention to these teachings, fill your heart with surrender, devotion, sacredness, because that is the way to enjoy it the most. May it blossom in your heart, may you also find liberation. Moving on, Ashtavakra Samhita, chapter 18th, Peace. So Ashtavakra continues. Now he moves on to speak about peace. So Ashtavakra said, "Salutation to that which is bliss itself by nature, calmness and effulgent, with the dawning of the knowledge of which all delusion becomes like a dream." So he's saluting the self that is blissful, but is bliss by nature. Its nature, its existence is pure bliss. Calmness and effulgence. It's also the nature of the self. It shines by its own. With the dawning of the knowledge of which all delusion becomes like a dream. So after self-realization, everything becomes like a dream. What is called reality now is just seen as a dream, because it is. One gets plenty of enjoyments by acquiring all kinds of worldly objects. Surely one cannot be happy without renouncing them all. So here is a very clear distinction between enjoyments, pleasure, and happiness. They are two distinct things. So enjoyments and pleasure, they are the other side of the coin of suffering. It's in duality. So in a sense, it's like moves up and down. Pleasure, suffering, pleasure, suffering. Without one, you don't have the other. Because without the pair of opposites, it would be just normal. So it has to be cold, so that hot is felt. There must be the opposites, day and night, all of this. So pleasure and enjoyment is followed by suffering. This is its nature. So in a sense, enjoyment and pleasure are actually suffering. And suffering is actually enjoyment and pleasure. They both come together. So that's why he says, surely one cannot be happy without renouncing it all. All fears are rooted also in the desires for pleasure, for enjoyment, and they cannot be dealt with without renunciation. And renunciation is the means to transcend duality. And by transcending duality, by realizing the self, there is happiness. The true happiness that all are seeking, but mistakenly believe that it comes from enjoyments or that has anything to do with enjoyments and pleasure. When pleasure and enjoyments, they are the other side of the coin of suffering, and they come together. They are the same. And as there is enjoyments of worldly objects, duality is there, so identification with the body is there, suffering, misery will always be there. If not for anything else, for not knowing who you really are. How can one whose heart's core has been scorched by the heat of the sun of sorrow, arising from duty, enjoy happiness without the continuous shower of the ambrosia of tranquility? How can one whose heart's core has been scorched by the heat of the sun of sorrow arising from the duty enjoy happiness without the continuous shower of the ambrosia of tranquility? So as long as there's no tranquility, as long as the vrittis of the mind have not been dissolved in the self, there's no possibility to enjoy real happiness. This universe is but a state of consciousness. In reality, it is nothing. The existent and the non-existent do not lose their inherent nature. So this universe is but a state of consciousness. In reality, it is nothing. It doesn't exist. It's just a state of consciousness. Maybe this is hard to explain, but in the experience of the seeker of truth in a state of illusion, he perceives that as his consciousness moves higher, certain things that he was dealing previously, he will stop dealing with them. And other things, his experience changes drastically, becomes with less friction, and as his vibration falls down again, he will immediately start experiencing all those things again, which he didn't prior. So it is a state of consciousness, more or less the same. So, but in reality, it is nothing. So the existent, what is called the existent? Well, in this case, we can also say the existent, which is the self, and the non-existent do not lose their inherent nature, because the self is all there is. It is absolute. Nothing exists beyond the self, so it never loses its inherent nature. And the non-existent, which is the world, by not existing, also it doesn't lose its inherent nature. Nothing changes for that which doesn't exist. The self, which is absolute, effortless, immutable, and spotless, is neither far away nor limited. It is verily ever attained. Because the self is all there is. And individual existence, the existence of the universe, is just an illusion. Just a mind-made illusion. Nothing else. So it's ever attained because it's never lost. So it's kind of a game, just kind of a game, that has to be played from the standpoint of the blind one. Either he plays the game of liberation, or he doesn't play at all, but playing the game of worldliness and not playing the game of liberation because the self is ever attained. That is just blindness. An absolute, yes, effortless. There's no effort in the self is all. Immutable and spotless. It is beyond all attributes, qualifications. Those whose vision is unveiled as soon as illusion ceases and the self is realized live with their sorrows dispelled. So those whose vision is unveiled, so the blind one is like, has a veil in his eyes and cannot perceive reality. So those whose vision is unveiled, another word for the realization of the self, is revelation. As soon as illusion ceases and the self is realized, they come together. They live with their sorrows dispelled. All their sorrows dispelled because their real nature is seen as non-existent. And the one who carried the sorrows also dissolves. So the sorrows dissolve themselves also. They get dispelled. Knowing all as mere imagination and the self as free and eternal, does the wise one act ignorantly like a child? No, he may act like childlike, but not of ignorance, surely not of ignorance, but in a playful manner. The child acts in a playful manner, but it's ignorant about the nature of the universe and about itself. The wise one knows what the universe is, knows who he is. So he acts like a child because he acts in a playful manner, but not in ignorance. Knowing for certain that one's self is Brahman and that existence and non-existence are figments, what does one who is free from desire know, say, or do? So knowing for certain that one's self is Brahman, only the self-realized one knows that for certain. And that existence and non-existence are figments of imagination. What does one who is free from desire know, say, or do? So nothing else remains to be known for the one who has reached self-realization. There's nothing else to do. So bodies say and do and whatever. Self-realized doesn't, even if the body is doing something. So for the one who knows that that oneself is Brahman, has achieved the ultimate and has nothing else to do. Such thoughts as this indeed I am, and this I'm not, are annihilated for the yogin who has become silent by knowing for certain all as the self. So, identification is no longer possible for the one who has transcended illusion. So these affirmations, I am this or this I'm not, they disappeared for the yogin who has become silent by knowing for certain all as the self. Silent means quiet, in the sense that has nothing else to do. So has become silent, doesn't involve himself any longer, because he has reached the ultimate goal, his real nature, the self. Nothing else is there to accomplish. The yogin who hasn't attained tranquility has no distractions, no concentration, no increase in knowledge, no ignorance, and neither pleasure nor pain. So what does this mean? The yogi who has attained self-realization has no distraction because he has realized oneness. He has become oneness. So there's only distraction when there are two. When there's duality, there can be distraction. For distraction to be there, that which distracts and the one that gets distracted, they both have to be present. When there's just oneness, where is the place for distraction? And also no concentration. Again, for concentration, there must be the object of concentration and the one to concentrate. So, after transcending duality, there's no distraction, no concentration. There's no relation with the universe whatsoever. No increase in knowledge, he has reached fullness, so there's no way to increase knowledge. And there's no ignorance either. By the realization of the self, ignorance disappears. And neither pleasure or pain. These belong to the body, and this is only possible through ignorance. But these are from the body, for the body. Okay.
Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.